Hello, and welcome to the Growth and Thriving podcast, where we celebrate those who have overcome great adversity and examine the tools and techniques by which we grow and create lives of thriving. I'm your host, Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak, the biker psychologist. And today I am super excited to talk to this guest and have you all get to hear what she has to say. I've been lucky enough to be a work colleague with this person. And what I will tell you is that Lizzy Mackiewicz is an extraordinary certified personal trainer. She legitimately changes people's lives. But she's a person who, at least for me, when I met her, without knowing anything about her, she has that aura, that persona that I knew that she had overcome some real adversity and hardship in her life. And I knew that she uses that on the foundation in which she helps other people. She is somebody who I love to refer others to because she knows how to work with people who are in difficult and sensitive situations and still get them great fitness results. She's a remarkable fitness and nutrition coach. And I'm really excited for her to talk to us about some of her personal history, where she comes from, how she came to be where she is, and what kinds of tools and techniques, how she approaches her work, how she helps people, and how you, as people who are watching or listening, can take those tools and improve your lives as well. Lizzy, thank you so much for taking time out today to be here.
Yeah, you are so welcome. Thank you for that introduction. That was really nice. I often think of myself as, yes, a personal trainer, but also somebody who, dropped out of college a couple times and dabbled in a few things here and there. But I did find what I would consider to be my passion, or what maybe I was created to do, which is help people through fitness. That being said, kind of what brought me into fitness was honestly kind of working through some of my past. I have found that training your body helps you understand your mind and your spirit and other attributes of who you are. And if you're able to improve that, you're able to improve other areas of your life. I learned that from a pretty young age. I started exercising probably, I was like 11. I was like pretty young when I started finding healing in fitness. My mom would tell me I was going to be a registered dietitian because I cared about nutrition too, but I always knew that wasn't the route for me. But that being said, really what fitness originally was for me was a means of control, to like kind of take my life back and to be in control of what my body is doing at what time and when, and how hard I'm pushing it, and I can cause it to react in certain ways because I knew how to do that. But that need for control, and that need for healing through fitness kind of came from really from my childhood. I think a lot of people have trauma in their lives, but I think childhood trauma is like a special kind of trauma. It's a bit different because you're developing. Yeah. So the majority of my childhood trauma happened between the ages of probably around 3, because that's what I can remember, and around 8 years old. So pretty significant chunk of time during when I was growing and developing. So that trauma led me to feel very out of control in my body, and it started to bring me into a need of not being able to identify my own needs and wants, but always being able to easily identify other people's needs and wants and cater to those, which of course helped me in my career as a personal trainer, but is not always the best way to be, constantly always bending to other people's needs and being a means of support for everyone else. So just to dig in a little bit of a trigger warning for childhood abuse, but to go into it a little bit, I and I think a lot of people can relate to this day and age, but I was what I would consider kind of raised in a cult. And it was pretty common in that cult that women were told to submit to the authority of men. And unfortunately, that was indoctrinated in me from a pretty young age. So I believed that I had to do what I was told, whatever that would be. And unfortunately, because of that, I was sexually assaulted from those young ages that I mentioned before from my father, which eventually led into a bad cycle of me just allowing people to abuse me, which kind of happens when you've been abused, because that's what's normal. But it gave me a lot of empathy for others. But it's like unhealed trauma perpetuates further trauma. So it's like, how do I explain this? It's like you don't mean to go looking for it, but it finds you. It's like people who are abusive can like sniff you out. It's weird.
So I have a way that I describe that to people I work with, I think. So I can throw it out there and you tell me if it fits or not, if it's what you're describing. So because, one of the things that happens a lot is I find people repeat their patterns, right? And so grow up with whatever maltreatment or abuse or and it is like not everybody grows up with it, but it is more ingrained in people who had it as a child, right? Because it sort of became part of their culture, part of who they are. If you're mistreated when you're 30, but you've been raised well, you can sort of say at 30, well, no, that's not right. I don't want to accept that. Born into it, it's just how the world is. And so people tend to, one of the things that happens very commonly is people will get into a new circumstance, whether it's a new job or a new romantic relationship or some new situation, and talk about how different it is from the past one. But then fast forward 2 years and they're in the exact same spot that they were just in. So to me, the way I always explain it is it's like, you had chocolate ice cream and you hated chocolate ice cream and chocolate ice cream was miserable. And so now you're looking at mint chocolate chip and you're like, oh, it's so different. It's so different. This is so amazing. It's nothing like that chocolate ice cream. But then 2 years down the road, you're like, oh my God, it's still ice cream, right? It's still the same. And then you get into a new situation. You're like, well, this time it's strawberry ice cream and it's so different from chocolate, so different from from mint chocolate chip. And then 2 years down the road, you're like, oh my God, it's all ice cream again, right? And if you're really going to change the pattern, you got to get a steak, right? Like you got to do something that's not ice cream. Different flavors of ice cream are just going to bring the same result. Does that sound like what you're?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I definitely had not had any steak yet. So growing up, because I was still that kind of traumatized child inside of myself, seeking validation, always submitting, never questioning anything, always allowing people to take advantage of me. Those kinds of things, unfortunately led me into being like groomed into a marriage. So there was this person that was going to church with me who kind of saw me as an opportunity for those attributes I talked about. And, they started grooming me. I think I had just turned 16 and they were like 29. And after I graduated high school, and turned 18, they, dug in their heels a little bit more and, got me to go on a date with them. And because what I had been like taught about, at least in the like religious group I was within, which he was as well, I was like taught that like after you don't go on a date to like get to know somebody. You go on a date because you're like, I don't know, betrothed to them. Like if you go on a date with them, like you have started to court them, like that is now your obligation to continue that relationship kind of. Like it's like a kind of like a purity culture kind of thing. And I'd gone on a date with them and you know, there was no like red flags or anything other than the fact that they were so much older than me and I didn't really know any different. And no one around me was saying that it was bad or showing any level of concern whatsoever, just because he was a church member. And there was a couple times people brought it up and then he was able to like get them on his side or whatever, because he was very good at, I don't know, manipulating people, I guess. But so I ended up getting married, I think right after I turned 19, to this man. He was 31 and maybe 32, maybe 32. And it was pretty fast that like the mask like fell off. That the person that I had gotten to know was not the person I married. And of course, like to kind of uphold those like religious beliefs that I was like taught growing up, like, you know, I was a virgin when I got married and like I never had lived with that person. Like I didn't know them like that well, really, you know? So it was like a huge like learning curve. Suddenly I'm like, I'm married to this person that's like so much, you know, quite a bit older than me and who's like established and like that I don't really know that well. And it just like further kind of perpetuated the trauma. Like, you know, the abuse continued. He ended up, you know, I didn't have a word for it for a long time, but I ended up finding out that what I was experiencing was narcissistic abuse. And there was like, you know, some financial abuse with that and that kind of stuff. But like, because he had like gotten like grew me from a young age and like married me really young, like, and like was so far ahead of me, like there was like a piece of me that didn't have to like grow up, like figure it all out and like grow up. So there's like a piece of me that kind of like stayed like a teenager for a long time that just like didn't develop. Because like I wasn't like, he handled all the finances, like I never really even saw my paychecks ever, like I didn't know, like I just didn't, I don't know,
Right.
you know. So that went on for a while. I think it was like right around our 6th or 7th anniversary that I had started like kind of secretly going to therapy to like talk about what was going on. Because when
You
I
had some
first,
sense that it wasn't right, even though you grew
yeah,
up.
I started to see that something was felt wrong, just because things would happen and I would feel hurt. And I didn't really understand why these feelings of hurt kept coming back. Like, why am I still feeling this pain over and over again? Which made me think like something might be wrong. Um, and like I didn't talk to, like it was also like kind of a part of like the religious culture of like I never talked badly about my spouse in front of anybody, and I always like protected his name, and I never like brought it up to anyone. But that being said, there was a couple people who were coworkers of mine at the time, who kind of like met him, and then like they were like older women, and they like pulled me aside and they're like, hey, I'm like super concerned by XYZ. That's like, are you okay? Are you sure you're good? Yeah. So there was like a few people in my life who were kind of in a mentorship position to me, and like outside of the church kind of thing, who brought up concern. So that's kind of when I had like the first inkling that something might be wrong, because someone on the outside said something and it kind of resonated. And then after I started seeking therapy, you know, it really did take my therapist saying like, what you're experiencing is abuse.
Right.
For me to be like, really? Like validation for like this feeling really wrong. Yeah. Which was like a lot to take in, but it was good. And so I started going to therapy, and it really wasn't much longer after that that I realized like that I needed to leave. Like I just attempted to try to repair things and kind of explain to my ex-husband that like, hey, these things aren't okay. Like it makes me hurt when you do XYZ. And so I like barely started establishing boundaries for the first time, and it was not received well at all. And I could see things like, if I can, because I could tell like this is something I wanted, and there was no way I was gonna turn around and stop. Like I had my like first taste of like boundary setting and like standing up for myself, and I wanted more of it. Because for me, like a big reason why I started therapy, other than like starting to see those red flags and realizing something's not right, was like just recognizing the pattern that I was in was like people would use me and then I'd basically tell them thank you instead of like stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just sat down and I was like, why am I like this? This other people aren't like this, you know? So why am I doing this? Is there like a different choice that I could be choosing? And that's when I started therapy. When I was like, is there another option than to feel this way? And there was, and I was like, well, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so I ended up choosing to get divorced, which once again was like very against what I was taught.
Yeah.
Like really, like I was doing like the worst thing ever by choosing that. I felt like I was choosing the worst thing ever. And I like tried to explain to those around me who were like really against it in the church, like, you know, that I was like being abused. I didn't feel like it was like the best option for me so that I could get healthy again. And like that was really frowned on. Like you know, it was very much believed that I should have stayed. So I kind of got like I don't know, excommunicated from my community. And like no one reached out to me, like not, and like I had been within that community at the church for my entire life, like very involved. And yeah, no one checked on me
Mhm.
after I got like pushed out.
So what
Um
was that transition like? Because you now have
mhm,
a life where that's not, right? You're not part of
yeah,
that community. And
yeah,
you do okay, right? You have a,
I am doing good. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
what was the transition like at first?
um I mean, it was definitely like going through the process of like grieving
Mm,
where you're feeling sad and then mad and then confused and then like you're in denial and like you're really going through all of them. And my therapist would kind of explain it to me like I was like on a pendulum
mm,
where I'd feel like one extreme emotion and then I would swoosh over to like the other extreme emotion. It would be like back and forth for extended periods of time. But as I've healed, it's like that pendulum has slowed down,
mm,
but just like in an actual pendulum, when it's going back and forth, like when it's going side to side, it is going faster.
yeah.
So I still sometimes feel all those emotions, but I get over it much quicker and move on to the next.
Mhm.
As that healing
So
is happening and
so in
as that's
relation
flowing.
to, sorry, you
No.
still feel all those emotions in relation to being sort of shunned or excommunicated
Mhm.
by that community?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I still experience some like anger around it, but I've slowly started to be able to like feel some feelings of like forgiveness towards those people,
Mhm.
and like letting it go, which is good, but it's taken some, this has been like 3 years of like since that's happened.
No? Well, 3 years is
Uh,
not very long after a lifetime.
no, okay. I feel like I've made a lot of progress in that time, but it's also like it's slow. Yeah. It feels slow.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta tell you, I would not. I mean, for you being the person I know, I would not call it slow. I would,
No,
I would guess that this was a decade ago and not 3 years.
yeah. So yeah, my therapist has told me I've been healing pretty like aggressive. Like I'm pretty aggressive
Yeah,
in like when she gives me advice, like I follow it and I like really go into the hard work in our sessions. Like I don't shy away from it.
yeah.
And I'm, you know, and yeah, it's only been, so it was December of 2019, 2018, December of 2018 when I went to my very first therapy session. Um, but it's, yeah, so we're coming on 4 years now, but I just wanted it so bad. I
Yeah,
really did.
yeah,
Um, but through that process, like, um, it's interesting to be like on the other side of, well, I'm not, no one's fully healed, but I have definitely made some, I feel healed in some ways. Um, and being on the other side of that, I can kind of recognize now kind of those unhealed hurts in others. Like I can recognize those patterns now being on the other side of it. Um, which is really interesting.
yeah.
And I hurt for, you know, I feel for those people. I
Right.
remember it was like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, so you're giving me the words now. I had trouble explaining it when I was introducing you. And that's like, what quality is it that makes you stand out so much from other fitness coaches that I know and work with? What is it that, and what I think you're getting at is you have tremendous empathy. You can certainly,
Yeah.
you have almost like a sixth sense to know, even when you don't know, when you haven't been told that somebody's been through something, you can kind of tell
Mhm.
that they have. But
Yeah.
then what you do, which is really what I've witnessed, which is really remarkable, and I don't know if you're aware that you do it, but so I don't want to embarrass you because I know you're very humble, but but you are remarkably strong.
No, thank you.
Well, and I don't mean it necessarily as a compliment, it's just an observation. I mean, to be as young as you are, because you just turned 30 not too long ago.
Mhm.
You're a person in your 20s, and to have the sort of fortitude and resilience to press on toward what you know is right when in your entire community, your family, everyone in your life is excommunicating you and shutting you out for doing that. I think a lot of people, it's the um, when you look at statistically, it takes most women tend to unfortunately be the victims of abuse more than men.
Mhm.
It takes them 7 attempts to leave an abusive marriage,
Wow.
and for a variety of reasons. But you had the kind of strength where you pressed on, and you
Mhm.
pressed on in therapy, and you've made all this progress. And what I've seen you do with people that you coach is share that strength. They for the hour that they're with you, they're temporarily stronger than they are before and after, because it's like you let them use your strength for a period of time.
Yeah, I can feel that. I think that I've always kind of been that way. Um, I had this kind of like core belief that I have had since I was pretty young. I think I was like in middle school when I kind of made this kind of my mantra, but I and I still think I believe this. But I remember telling myself I believe that if I see a need that I can meet, that I am morally obligated to meet that need.
Yeah.
Um, and I try to carry that into my sessions for sure. But along with like healing and learning boundaries, I have done that to my detriment previously in my life, but I am at a different point now where I can navigate how much that I can give and empathize, um, when I should not, um, and how much I can give of myself and of my energy to another person.
Yeah.
Because I used to give like indiscriminately to my own detriment
Yeah.
for a very long time until I started going to therapy, really. So it's nice to be able to have that strength
Yeah.
and know how to actually use it properly.
Well, and I didn't know you back then, so I can't speak in an educated fashion, but just knowing what I know about psychology and human relationships and interactions, I would gamble that what you were giving back then,
Mhm.
in such a way that it was depleting you and taking from you, and was probably not as effective to the people receiving it either.
Yeah, probably not.
It's a different kind of giving, right?
Hmm.
You know, there's the kind of giving where, like, you know, this person's down in a hole, and you get down on your belly and reach down and give them a hand and use all that strength to help pull them up out of the hole. And then there's the kind of giving where, like, you jump down in a hole with them and now you're both in a hole.
Yeah.
Well,
I have done that so many
yeah,
times. Yeah. Yeah.
sure, and it's fine to jump in the hole with them if you know the way out, right?
Uh-huh.
It's just going to be two people in a hole,
Yeah.
and then everyone is suffering, and you've and it's, I recognize it because now I'm more than, well, I'm almost twice your age, right? I'm like, it's a bit of an exaggeration.
So.
I am, but I went through a lot of healing from childhood trauma and such when I was in my 30s. I did it
Hmm.
later than you did. I just fucked up my 20s, um, with terrible relationships and life habits and things. But um, But in my 30s, I started to heal. And so I recognized the pattern, right? When I was younger, before I healed, I would do exactly what you did. I would give to my own detriment. I would give more than I had to give. I would, put myself in bad positions to be there for others, which really didn't help those others
Right.
much. But I had a lot of hubris about how great I was for sacrificing, right? I had a lot of
Yeah. I think
belief
that's
about
pretty
like
common.
how generous I was.
Yeah.
And since doing some of the work in healing,
Mhm.
I try to help people also from a place of strength that I think is more beneficial for them.
Yeah.
And there's no need to brag about what I'm doing or
Right. Yeah.
any hubris at all about how great it is. It's just
Mhm.
people in a community supporting each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is how it should be,
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been it's been pretty cool working in the fitness industry, like working as a trainer and being able to coach people. Um I took a brief break from it when I was like first like going through my divorce, and I had to close my personal training business. And then I didn't even know if I wanted to continue training at that point. Like I was so like, let me just set like my life on fire all at once and just do all the things. And I wasn't sure if I'd ever come back. I really wasn't. Um at that point, that's when I went to school for art, which was right before COVID started. So that went super well. Um I moved all the way. So I moved an hour and a half north up to Lakewood to go to art school. And I like got an apartment like 8 minutes from campus. And then like I don't know, it might have been 6 weeks later that everything shut down and I wasn't able to, and I just like signed like an 18-month lease and everything. And it like put me in such like a weird time in my life because I didn't know what I was doing for work. I didn't know if I wanted to continue with school. Like I didn't have like family to lean on. Like I didn't even know. It was so weird. Like
Yeah.
COVID was such a very like explorative like time for me where like there was no boundaries and no expectations, and like I was having to like I wasn't even in a position of being able to rebuild yet. Like everything was like broken and like what felt broken and like falling apart, and like didn't even know where to go. It was like, so it was just such a good time. Like I wouldn't trade that time for anything because I learned so much about myself. And it was like really beneficial to take a step back at that time from helping others
Yeah.
and like focus that energy on myself. So
Mm.
that went on for a couple of years during COVID. But, I don't know. Honestly, I'm surprised that I decided to try to go back into training after all that. I was really worried. I remember I was talking to my therapist about it. I was like, I miss it. I know it's like a much better way for me to pay my bills than what I was doing, which was watering plants
Mm.
for work during COVID. Um, which definitely does not pay you a whole lot at all. And I was like, this is the one skill I have. I need to start doing this again.
Mhm.
And I remember I was just like, I don't know if I have the ability to do this right anymore. Like I'm a different person now. But I was like so shocked when I like just tried that I was a better coach.
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
really
say there's no way you were a better coach before. I didn't know
was. Yeah,
that,
no.
but it can't be.
Yeah, it's so incredible now how I just understand people better. I understand myself better. I'm just more confident in myself, like in a really positive way. And I'm able to I just understand wellness a bit differently as well. For me, it was like I said, a method of control over my body that I didn't have because during my childhood trauma, and I needed that back. And honestly, exercise really did help me feel like I had control over my body again. But after my healing, and I didn't need exercise for that, like wellness became more well-rounded. Like the
Mm.
way I saw my body and my mind and like everything was like much more balanced and like healthy and less extreme.
Yeah.
Like I think a side effect of trauma or maybe just abuse is like a lot of like black and white thinking, a lot of extremes,
Yeah.
kind of like almost obsessive things here and there. But to like bring like the gray area back into fitness actually was really good for me. I think really good for my clients too.
Yeah. I have this belief about you. You talked about how it would fulfill the need for control.
Uh-huh.
And I have a belief about control that makes me very unpopular. And I can tell you, as a guy who was not very popular in high school or college or whatever, I don't need more characteristics that make me unpopular. But so I actually don't I believe that control is an illusion. I don't believe that it exists.
Yeah, right. I can see that.
And but what I do believe in is influence. Right. So to me, control is like, it's like reaching into a well or a sink and trying to grab a handful of water, right? And you don't come away with anything. And if you try to squeeze harder and keep water, you actually lose more, right? Whereas influence is much softer. And if you kind of scoop your hands in that way, you'll lose some water, but you'll keep some as well. And everyone I've ever known, from military veterans, combat veterans, special forces, Green Berets, SEALs, to sexual assault survivors, to any trauma survivors that I've worked with, had a period of time where they did drastic things in the interest of feeling like they had control. And everyone who's ever been successful in healing, in achieving post-traumatic growth, in thriving, has found the need to release that grasp on control in order to actually feel like they have it.
That's true. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think releasing that control has given me so much freedom in my life and like acceptance. I think a lot of my, desire for control was like a need for like, of course, to that sensation of like knowing what's going to happen, or that I think I know what's going to happen, that I won't be blindsided or something like that. Or that I have a say of some kind. But to kind of, I think one thing that kind of became really obvious to me when I started healing was like the reality of like impermanence, and like what you said, that control is not real. Because I was in like this very pristine, what at the time felt like a very like pristine bubble of like control, especially since my spouse at the time was very, very, very controlling and like very good at being controlling, or in a semblance of being in control and knowing everything and being ordered and like very perfectionistic. And it was all like based in, now I know it was all based in like anxiety and some like disordered beliefs and or whatever issues.
Right.
But I was like in that bubble, and it really made me believe that everything was in control, everything was ordered, nothing could change, like it was the way that it was. And to suddenly be slapped in the face with that not being true whatsoever kind of gave me a little bit of an identity crisis at the time. Like, I just wasn't sure who I was, what to do, like what was real anymore. Like it was very intense to realize that control was not real. Yeah.
And it's funny, that sort of situation, that bubble that you're talking about, in my experience, really breeds a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Like in a relationship, either he can have control or you can have control. But in an abundance mindset, you both can have some influence.
Yeah. It was definitely a scarcity mindset for sure. Yeah. And that's, and I believed behind it too, like, until I didn't. And then I started pushing against that belief, which definitely caused problems, but it led to my realizations and my freedom. So it's not so bad.
Yeah. And I noticed that, there's things like, I know you've read Bessel van der Kolk, right? Body Keeps the Score. And it seems like listen, I went to school for like a decade, right? I have a master's degree and a PhD in psychology, and you haven't done that. But without any of that formal education, you seem to have naturally fallen into, or designed for yourself. You haven't fallen into it. You've done it very intentionally, I think. Designed for yourself lots of the things that lead to healing, right? Like we
Mhm.
talked about art school, but I mean, you're a phenomenal artist.
Thank you.
And you are someone and when we get to the end of the episode, we'll have you share whatever socials or whatever you want to share, and people can go and see some of the artwork you put up. I mean, it's expressive, right? You
Thank you.
clearly express yourself through your artwork.
Yeah.
And he talks about the need for like physical strength, right? Trauma lives in your body, and the
Hmm.
stronger you get, and you know, uh, Lizzy's a competitive power lifter. She's strong as fuck. And so, there's that. And then there's this idea of meaning making, right? People who overcome trauma find a way to make meaning of what they've been through. And you do
That's
that,
true.
spending your life giving back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. In that other book that I've been reading, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, I'm only like in the second chapter, I think, but he was kind of talking about like you're given circumstances that you are not responsible for, but you are responsible then to deal with
Right.
that circumstance.
Yes.
Which really resonated, like that feeling of responsibility, which I tried. I didn't realize that I was doing before. Like when I asked myself, why am I this way?
Yeah.
What are my other options? Like I didn't realize I was, choosing a different choice,
Right.
which is a difficult thing to do. It made sense to me at the time. But I can see how those who have had trauma, maybe even those who haven't, look at a situation as that it's happening to them. They're not responsible. Um, they don't have to do anything with that circumstance,
Right.
that they're just seeking kind of, validation or empathy. I don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
something.
Sure. Right.
And I think that's a pretty easy route to take. I don't know why I didn't necessarily see that as an option. I feel glad that I didn't, because I
Yeah.
think you can get stuck in a really bad cycle with that. And
Mhm.
it's really hard to get out. But I did really view what happened as like, what do I need to do now? Like what's my job to heal myself? Like what do those steps need to look like? And then getting like professional help to do that, because I obviously didn't have the tools to do that. Otherwise it would have already happened. But yeah,
Well, but therapy is a tool, right?
it
Like,
is a tool. Yeah.
what's remarkable is that you just had that insight, you
Mm.
know?
It doesn't, yeah, it's
I
weird.
Yeah, like I didn't have that insight. I can tell
I
you,
think it's, yeah, I don't think a lot of people do. I don't know. I honestly don't know why I did. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm glad though.
I can tell you the things that um there are two main things that showed me the need to heal, right?
Mm.
Maybe three if you want to be specific. But the first is that I worked back, this was in the 90s. I was in my early 30s.
Hmm.
And hmm, no, I was probably I don't know if I was 30 just yet. I was in my late 20s. And first is there was a woman who went to the gym where I worked because I was a trainer back then. Was not yet a psychologist. And this woman, very similar to you in a lot of ways. I mean, she was older than you are now, but she had this amazing aura. She was just somebody who people were drawn to. She had this great energy. And it was very clear to me, anyway, without really knowing her, that she had lived through some serious shit. I didn't know what, but she just had this kind of great aura that, as far as I know, only comes to people who have overcome tremendous adversity.
Mhm.
And she was a therapist. And um and so she was there. I saw her almost daily at the gym. She was present. The other two things that happened, the first was that I was in a kind of a toxic-ish relationship,
Mhm.
and I was arguing with my partner at the time. And I was not very mindful about who I was in the world. I had the idea of who I wanted to be, but in the midst of the argument, she said to me, this is why I can't be with you. You're such a tortured soul. And like you could hear like the needle scraping across the record, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
everything stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that statement hit me so hard, but I just had this moment of like, holy shit, that's exactly how I'm acting. And it's not at all who I want to be. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
she's right. That's how I'm behaving. And the other thing that had happened was I had several months before that discussion ended a relationship with somebody with whom I was living. And so I moved out and I moved into this tiny, tiny little, what's called a carriage house on the East Coast in Jersey. We have carriage houses. And so it was this huge, big, wealthy house, and they had like 2 acres of yard. And then they had this tiny, tiny little outside house, which, 100 years ago was probably where slaves would have lived.
Mm-hmm.
But I rented it from them and I had nothing. I took no furniture. I took my books. I took my music. There was no streaming music back then. It was CDs. Took my CDs and I took my clothes. I slept on the floor. I had no other furniture. And this place was so tiny that if I reached up over my head, I would hit the ceiling. It had 2 rooms. And on either room, if I lie down on the floor and stretched out, I could touch both walls. And I had to sort of suck in and turn sideways to get in and out of the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
I never stayed there. I would leave for work super early in the morning and I would come home super late at night, and I would do my best to not be there until I got snowed in. And I was snowed in for like 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And the first day or so was just crazy anxiety.
Yeah.
But once I like figured out to breathe, I realized that I actually really liked the peace and the sense of being alone, and so I went to that woman at the gym and I asked her to take me on as a client, and I started going to therapy with her. She ended up being the daughter-in-law of actually a very famous therapist.
Nice.
Yeah, I was totally unintentional, but I became friends with her father-in-law later. He was a cool guy. Yeah, and Arnold Lazarus was her father-in-law. He's a famous therapist. But I worked with her, and that's where I started to grow. And it reminds me of you in COVID, right? Like I snowed into this empty place.
Not great. Yeah.
I just had to deal with myself, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, it was very uncomfortable. It was
yeah,
like it's so weird. Like it comes at what felt like the worst time, but also the best time, right? Like it
yeah.
happens
Right. It
when it's
turns out the
supposed
worst
to.
time is the best time, right?
Yeah, that is what it was. And yeah, I remember being so upset. Like it's like I felt like I had been in bondage by choice for so
Yeah,
many years, just from my trauma, and then having that like very, very like controlling kind of abusive spouse, and
yeah,
then finally breaking free and being on my own, and then boom, COVID.
yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna go experience the world. No, I'm not. Yeah.
Yep, the universe had other. There's this
Yeah.
old saying says, "Man plans and God laughs."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. God was like, no, you're gonna experience just you. Like
yeah.
nothing else.
And the irony of that is, with all of that desire for control, you were talking about not wanting to be blindsided.
Yep. There was. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I learned that blindsided is kind of inevitable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Lizzy, one of the things I try to convey through this podcast and through my practice is what the reality of healing and recovery from adversity looks like,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, to me, one of the reasons I invited you on is because you're a great picture of what that looks like. Um, so, for example, do things trigger you once in a while?
Yes, but I know that that's what's happening. I know that I'm being triggered, and then
Sure.
I can approach it with self-compassion and like curiosity. Like
Yeah.
I'm curious, like why am I being triggered? What is this feeling? What caused it? What happened? So that's like huge progress. But yes, I still get triggered. Sometimes it gives me like I go into a bad response or a bad pattern. But sometimes I can recognize that I'm being triggered and I can do something about it. But
So,
no, yeah, it happens.
and I'm guessing, I don't know for a fact, but I'm guessing it happens less frequently than it used to.
It happens, yeah, it definitely happens a lot less frequently. Even over the last year, it's happening quite a lot less frequently in the healing that I've been doing. Um, like even around this time last year, I was on depression medication, and then I had also experienced my first panic attack for the first time. I think I had been working at Lifetime for 3 days.
Oh dear.
And I had my first panic attack at work,
Oh no.
in Kevin's office, and he helped me and knew what was happening, and he drove me home. So thank you, Kevin. But I was clearly that was a response of, I think, being triggered. But so it was like pretty consistent for a few years during my therapy. It's really only been in probably the last 8 months that I've been able to, like, I've noticed that slowing down. I'm
Mhm.
having a better response. I'm able to
Right.
stay level headed and not disassociate. So I'm making progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the part I want to highlight, and I think I know the answer. And if I'm wrong, well, then there'll be egg on my face. But tell me about the periods of time in between those triggers.
Um, well, it's like, hmm, it's like definitely more level. So it's almost like a manic depressive kind of cycle
Mhm.
where the depression is there and I'm like couldn't care less about anything, and that goes on for a while, and then it starts to pendulum to the other side where every little thing feels overwhelming and overstimulating and really intense, and then I get triggered essentially. um so it's like not caring enough, caring too much,
Mhm.
like just relax, like I don't know what I want to call my depression, but it's like very complacent.
Mhm.
And then like every little, like even the littlest thing makes me feel like I'm like dying, like it's so intense, like on the other side. Yeah, is kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
So there's definitely some residual, I don't know, look for want of a better word, we call them symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
You involved in a fulfilling relationship?
right now I am. Yeah.
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 I'm sure that there's moments where you guys maybe don't see eye to eye or have some conflict,
Mm-hmm.
but generally speaking, this relationship, what most people would consider healthy.
I believe so. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
about how about meaning and fulfillment in regular life?
I do feel senses of meaning and fulfillment. um but I still go through bouts of time where I don't feel that. Like I feel, what's the point? Why do I even try? Very defeatist and like very easily overwhelmed. So I will have moments of feeling very fulfilled and very happy.
Mhm.
Um, and previously when I'd have those feelings, I would then instantly get anxiety about when is that feeling going to disappear again.
Right.
But I feel less anxiety after now, and I actually am able to be in the moment and enjoy it a bit more now.
Mhm.
And that's new. That's like
Yeah.
within the last month, kind of new. um, so I feel it. I feel the feeling of fulfillment. It's not then accompanied by dread, but I do go back into a cycle of feeling down afterwards.
Sure.
It's just not as bad though. Yeah.
Mhm. Successful in the workplace?
I mean, yeah. I have quite a lot of anxiety around work,
Mhm.
social anxiety.
Mhm.
Um, what's weird is I never at least felt the symptoms of social anxiety until I started healing. I
Mhm.
think it was there. I just didn't really, I was so able to dissociate from it or
Yeah.
like push it down or distract from it but now it comes up and I can't like dissociate or distract. Like I just feel it.
Mhm.
So like
Yeah.
I get like very nervous like every single Sunday before I start the work week again. I can barely enjoy the day because I have so much anxiety
Mhm.
about coming back to work on Monday.
Mhm.
So I get like the Sunday scaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I always think of it as like we're both tattooed people, right? When the tattoo is
Mhm.
healing, it itches like crazy, right?
Mhm.
Like you feel it more.
So
Yeah.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I will share with people that I know that you haven't shared when I asked about success in the workplace
Mhm.
is that out of a team of 20 some odd people, you have won awards 2 quarters in a row. So, you know, we can call that an objective measure of success.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You
Yeah.
find meaning and purpose in your work and what you do.
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is because I'm always encouraging people, right? I think there's this misnomer that healing, and especially if you go beyond just healing and talk about things like post-traumatic growth, like
Mm-hmm.
thriving,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an assumption that that means that there's like never a bad day again. Right? Like there's never a setback. Like
I wish. Yeah.
everybody's rosy and sunshine, and I'm
Mhm.
past that trauma. I'm over that,
Oh man, I wish. Yeah.
gone, and everything is lovely and wonderful. And I don't think that's what thriving looks like, right?
No. Yeah.
In fact, I wouldn't even want to live that way because
Mhm.
with nothing left to work through, like
Yeah.
you in my opinion, you're just waiting to die, right? Like
Yeah. It is like that. Yeah.
why live every day? And
Yeah.
so people who heal and people who thrive and grow and work on themselves have periods of depression.
Oh
They get
yeah.
triggered and have trauma responses,
Uh,
right? What differentiates, I think, people who are healing from people who are still kind of in the throes of like PTSD or clinical depression is that when it's clinical like that, it impacts your ability to function.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I remember being there. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so, like, you can look back, you've been at Lifetime for a year and some change. You had a day where you had to go home, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the time you're able to function,
Yeah.
right? And you're able to, those episodes of anxiety, those episodes of depression, those trigger moments are getting fewer and fewer, right? They're
Yeah. Yeah.
between.
Mm-hmm.
You bounce back from them quicker and quicker.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in them, you're having a different experience where you're able to be present and learn from them and feel them and experience them instead of dissociating or cutting off.
Yeah.
And the periods in between them are filled with fulfilling work and a
There
fulfilling
is. Yeah.
relationship and artwork that you love
Mhm.
and excel at. And so,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it surprises me sometimes just because I had never experienced that before. Right. So that's new, is that feeling of like fulfillment and contentment. That's something I always wanted. I could recognize that I wasn't feeling fulfilled or that I wasn't feeling happy or content in my life. And I, thought different things that I would do would fulfill that.
yeah,
But yeah, it really wasn't until after I healed that I was able to feel that. And
right,
it was a very strange feeling at first. Like I said, like it would make me feel anxious right after because I'm like, okay, when is that feeling gonna go away?
right,
Like
right.
when
When
will
am I
the
gonna
shoe
lose it?
drop? When
Yeah,
am I lose it? Yeah.
yeah,
But I'm at a point where I'm starting to recognize that like I am I am able to um I am able to thrive. Like I am able to do things in my life where I'm making a conscious choice that will lead me to feeling that way, where I am feeling fulfilled and content
yeah.
and things like that. And it's been like it's pretty incredible. Like I did not think I did get to a point where I didn't think I was ever gonna feel that.
Mm.
So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny you talk about waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I would argue that one of the main differences between the people who are happiest and people who are not
Hmm.
is that the people who are tend to be most anxious and a little bit worried and generally unhappy. Um, Whenever things are going well,
Mm.
they have a hard time appreciating it or savoring it or being mindful in the moment about it because they're worried about when
Yeah.
the shoe's going to drop, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the people who are happiest, they just know that the other shoe's going to drop sooner or later. So
Yeah.
they as well enjoy the good times while they're present.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. And I've realized that. And I think the other thing I've realized is like, if and when, right, the shoe drops, like, because I've done it before, I
Yeah.
know how to come out of it. Like, I
Right.
know that I can bring myself out of it. I have the tools. I know I can survive it. Like, I have done it. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
That brings me back to the whole like control thing, right? Because when you were talking about control, it's like you're trying to avoid being blindsided, right?
Uh-huh.
I think what enables us sometimes to let go of that need for control is having enough faith in our own resilience
Yeah.
that we just recognize that when we get blindsided, because we will eventually, we have the resources to work through it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pretty thankful for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Therapy is amazing. Mhm.
Yes, it can be, right?
Mhm.
It's the old AA saying it works if you work it, right?
Yeah, that's true. And
So,
I'm in a good position now where, like, for the first time ever, I know I said I've been going to therapy for like, 3, 4 years now, but it's only recent that I've started making, recommending that to other people when I can recognize that they're open to it and maybe need it.
yeah.
Um, so I actually have 2 of my clients now utilizing my therapist,
Yeah.
and it's helping them a lot, which is really cool. To see them on their own, like, healing journey now. Um, because I know it's hard to start, and I know it's hard to keep going. And
Yeah.
I've told them, like, in the last 4 years that I've had therapy, most oftentimes I go every 2 weeks. When I first started, it was like all the time. But it's tapered down to like every, 2 or 3 weeks. I dread it every time. I don't know why. Like, I want to cancel my therapy session every single time for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And I have always done it. And I have always been thankful that I have done it. Because it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. It is. It's very difficult.
For
Yeah.
sure. Of
Hmm.
course it is, right? But it's the hard things that you know give us the best benefit,
They
right?
do. Yeah.
You work hard and you recover, and you work hard and you recover.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's do this, Lizzy. Before we think about sort of wrapping up here, because I want to be mindful of your time.
Mhm.
Um, any last thoughts or things that seem really important that you feel like you want to say or share that we haven't gotten to?
Yeah. My last thoughts are that, like, therapy is for everyone.
Hmm.
It is for everyone for any reason at any time. Um, I think there's a common misconception, especially, I think with older generations, that you only go to therapy when you're like mentally ill, like you are having a problem, you are like crazy sick. But you do not have to be like at, these horrible extremes to ask for help. Everyone can benefit from therapy. We all can benefit from healing. Just like we all benefit from exercise, we all need to kind of exercise this part of our mind and emotions as well. So no problem is too small for a solution. So I want to encourage everybody to seek healing, no matter whether or not you've had trauma in your life or recognize what's happened to you as trauma. It all, there's benefit there. Um, and then, the last thing being just to, like, I mean, as cliche it is just to not give up. Yeah, keep going.
Yep. Yep. One foot in front of the other. You just keep growing, keep going, keep pressing
Yep.
on.
Yep. And it's worth it. Yeah, it's worth it to keep going. Yeah.
So, Lizzy, when I usually wrap up, we can either, if you want to, you are welcome to let people know how they can get a hold of you or give out your
Yeah.
socials.
Hmm.
If the other way I can do that, we didn't talk about this beforehand, is some people don't want their socials out into the public or their email or whatever, is people can contact me and I can put them in touch with you.
Yeah.
But do you
Yeah.
want to
So
tell people how to
yeah. So I will happily, like, I'll put my social media handles out there, and
Mhm.
then if anyone needs to contact me personally, they can reach out to you.
Sure.
But if they want to check out any of my art or anything like that on Instagram, my handle is Cran Casta Studios, CRANNCASTAS Studios. You should be able to find me all one word. And then on TikTok, I am all one word underrated blobfish. So you'll find me on there. I make silly videos and I also post art content on there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And people can also get in touch with you, no matter where they are in the country
Mhm.
or the world, because you do virtual
I
fitness
do.
coaching, right? And so,
Yes, I do virtual fitness coaching. If you are curious about that, you can find me on social media, also on TikTok at Lifted Up Fitness, all one word.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, Lizzy, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
courage and willingness to share your story with
Of
people.
course.
Yeah, I have no doubt that it's going to be impactful and healing for those who listen to it. I hope that it was also impactful and
Awesome.
healing for
Yeah,
you.
this was good. Thank you very much. Yeah, this was
Yeah,
really nice.
yeah, this was great. And definitely check out Lizzy, check out her artwork, check out her fitness coaching. She's exceptional. She is a remarkable human being. I, as always, want to thank everyone for watching or listening to this podcast. I know that your time is your most valuable commodity, and I'm so grateful when you choose to spend it with me. If you like this content, please hit like, make a comment. I respond to every comment, so comment and please share it. Share it with your network and your community, and let people know where to find us. I have 3 communities on Facebook. One of them is growing and thriving after hardship and adversity. The second is leadership skills for badasses, and the third one is parenting after adversity. I am new accounts on TikTok and Instagram. Both are biker psychologist, so you can find me there. Or my website is www.growthandthriving, all spelled out.com. So www.growthandthriving.com. On there, you can sign up for my Monday and Friday morning mindset email and videos. Those are free of charge, and I, of course, never share your information with anyone. So until next time, thank you everyone so much for watching or listening. I am Dr. Jerry Sunshine Novak, the biker psychologist, saying just keep growing until you're thriving. Take care.